Good afternoon, everybody. So my name is Sarah Schulman, and I am one of the founders of In With Forward. We're a social design shop in Vancouver and Toronto, trying to bring research and development into the social sector using design thinking and behavior change theory. And the question that keeps our team awake at night is, how do we turn our social safety nets into trampolines so that our welfare system bounces people up and does not inadvertently keep people down? Now, the preeminent Albert Einstein elucidates at least part of the answer to our question, which is, don't solve a problem with the same thinking that created it. So let's take a problem like social isolation and loneliness, which is a social problem that really bedevils Vancouver. Vancouver ties Toronto for the loneliest and most isolated city in Canada. And so where might fresh thinking come from to solve it? Well, we think it starts with fresh intelligence, with a different kind of knowledge and a different kind of resource base. It doesn't start with the same old statistics. Now, things like the census are a pretty valuable tool, but they can't tell us about the experience behind the numbers. They can shine a light on the problem, but they can't tell us much about the nature of the solutions. Meanwhile, service delivery data tells us quite a bit about existing solutions, but it doesn't tell us who doesn't use those services. And after all, the most lonely and isolated people aren't going to be in touch with our existing solutions and services. And then there's academic intelligence. Reports and studies offer pretty critical context. They tell us historical trends, they give us some theoretical models, and we need all of that. But they don't tell us much about the here and now in the particular contexts and situations in which we find ourselves. They don't shed much light on the lived experiences and on the nature of the things that attract people. They can't tell us about Gil and how he's managed to navigate Edmonton this winter, sleeping rough the entire winter and avoiding any contact with formal services. They don't probe what kinds of supports could look like that actually would attract Gil, that would motivate him, and that might help him reach his vision of a good life. Data that starts from the perspective of Gil and that uncovers values and motivations and looks to the future is what we call small or thick data. And small data comes from ethnographic and design research techniques. It specializes in finding the people that are left out of your services and programs and policies, and it speaks to the disconnects between what people say they're going to do and what they actually do, focusing on the elements of the solution space that are actually attractive and engaging. So what would it actually look like if this kind of small data was as available as statistical or academic data? How might we use small data to reframe problems from the perspective of people themselves and reshape policies and programs? Over the past 3 years, our teams had the real pleasure of traveling across Canada to 16 cities and towns, collecting small data alongside newcomers, adults living on the street, folks with addictions, folks with disabilities, folks experiencing domestic violence. And we've learned a lot. There's a lot of richness in all of those stories. So how can we capture that richness? Well, enter Grounded Data. Grounded Data is a data platform and a service that directly connects decision makers with the people most affected by their decisions. And here's what Grounded Data could look like. It could look like bringing together all of the stories of people on the margins with aggregated trends and bottom-up ideas. With Grounded Data, you could create story collections, searching for people's stories based on criteria like level of isolation. You could zoom out from individual level stories to population level data to see how any one person's experiences, like Bob, fit in with the quantitative data. You could dive deeper and look at how experiences of stress and isolation vary across micro-communities. And you could read trend reports based on what we're learning from people directly on the ground. But we wouldn't want to stop there. How could you take all of this know-how and insight from people themselves and actually put that into new ideas for policies and programs that are steeped in lived reality and international examples? So with Grounded Data, you could learn how to take these ideas and try some of them in your own context. So you could do all of these things if we could build grounded data. And grounded data is currently a beta test. It's something we're testing out with organizations across Canada. And we're looking for some fellow partners and collaborators who'd like to see this idea of small data in their own contexts, and who really believe that we need some different intelligence that starts with people themselves in order to turn our social safety nets into trampolines. Thanks.